Hola clase, hoy vamos a repasar los verbos saber y conocer. Los dos verbos significan to know in inglés. Okay, so the verbs saber and conocer both mean to know, but they cannot be used interchangeably. Okay, we have distinct rules for both and we must use them accordingly. Okay, let's first take a look at the verb saber. On your note guide, you first have a section in order to conjugate saber. So let's do that first. It is slightly irregular in its conjugation. You'll notice here that it has an irregular yo. Other than that, it's an ER verb, so it has ER endings. So your conjugation is say, sabes, sabe, sabemos, sabes, saben. We sang a song last year that went say, sabes, sabe, sabemos, sabes, saben. Okay? Hopefully that helped you in remembering the conjugation for this. So when do we use the verb saber? Again, if you remember that song, we know that saber is to know information and facts. So that will be your first usage. Okay, saber is to talk about factual information you know. So if we were saying, like in this example, he knows my phone number. Okay, that's information or fact, so we need to use the verb saber. I've left you space on your note guide to write down this translation, so let's work through it together. He knows my phone number. So he knows, we're going to say sabe, and then my phone number, mi número de teléfono. Okay, another time when you use the verb saber is when you say you know how to do something. So for example here, Juan knows how to read. Okay, let's conjugate this, or translate this together. Juan, and the knows would be sabe, how to read. We had this last year. Do we have to put the word como? And the answer to that is no. Okay, sabe is going to mean knows or knows how to. And then all you have to put is read. So your final answer here is going to be Juan sabe leer. Okay, so the main two things you should have gotten from this review is that saber is to know information and facts and how to do something. Okay, on your note guide, let's go to the right side of that note guide and let's talk about the verb conocer. Conocer also means to know, and it is also slightly irregular in its conjugation. It's a SCO verb. Okay, so again, an irregular yo. Its conjugation would be conozco, conoces, conoce, conocemos, conoces, conocen. Okay? The reason, and we talked about this last year, that it is conozco here is that if we did not put this Z, okay, pretend it wasn't there, I'm going to put the mouse over it, conocer, then in the yo form would be conozco. And you don't want conozco because conocer, we want to keep that soft C sound. Okay, so they put the Z in there. That's why it's conozco and why I call it a SCO verb. Let's look at the usages of conocer. Okay, so again, back to our song. If it said saber is to know information and facts. Conocer is to be familiar with a person, place, or thing. Okay, so that's our first usage here. We're going to use conocer to say that we're familiar with a person or a place. I've written two examples here for you. I know Mrs. Whitman, and we know Muncie. Let's work through these together. I know would be conozco. But then, did you remember, or would you have thought to put the personal a there? Conozco a Señora Whitman. So where does that a come from? Do you remember talking about it in Spanish 1? The personal a is going to be used anytime your direct object, okay, which here is Mrs. Whitman, when your direct object is a specific person, you've got the personal a. Okay? If you're thinking, what in the world is a direct object? Remember, a direct object is the who or the what of the verb. So when I say, I know Mrs. Whitman, who do I know? Mrs. Whitman. Thus, she is the direct object. Okay, let's look at number 2 here. We know Muncie. Conocemos Muncie. A personal a was not needed here because Muncie is not a person. Okay, it is our city that's nearby. Okay, let's look at another usage of conocer, and it's used to talk about meeting someone for the first time. So I wrote an example sentence here. I want to meet the president. Okay, so on your note guide, let's fill this part out together. I want, we would have quiero, and then to meet, conocer, and then the president. Ah, did you notice the personal a again? President is the direct object, and it's a person, so you need the a. A and L for the, they contract and become al. So your final answer is quiero conocer al presidente. Okay, I know the personal a is tricky because we don't have that in English. We don't hear it, so we commonly forget about it. And don't worry, we will practice that in class. Okay, now let's look at some practice sentences here. The key component of doing these practice sentences correctly is going to be your reading comprehension. You've got to know what these sentences are saying so that you know which verb to pick, saber or conocer. So my advice to you would be, as you're doing these, read it in English so then you can think, is it information and facts or how to, or is it to be familiar with a person, place, or thing, or meet someone for the first time? Okay, so we'll do number 1 together. 1, I know how to write emails. Okay, so that's how to do something. That's going to be the verb saber. So your answer would be yo sé. Okay, please pause me and work on numbers 2 through 7, and then we will review them together. Okay, number 2, you know the principal of the school. The principal is a person, so it's conoces. Did you notice my usage of the personal a? That could also be a hint when reading the sentences that says, hey, use conocer here because there's a personal a. Okay, just a little trick to help you out. Number 3, we know where the school is. Okay, we know where the school is. We know its location. So, information or facts, sabemos. This question might have been very tricky for you. And here's why. We had this problem last year. We know where the school is. I'm not saying we know the school. We are familiar with the school. No, I'm saying I know where it is. I'm saying I know information about it. Okay, so therefore it has to be saber. Okay, let's look at 4. I know Maria really well. Maria is a person, so you have conocer. Yo conozco. Again, the personal a. Number 5, they know Yorktown really well. Yorktown is a place, so we're going to need conocer. Ellos conocen Yorktown muy bien. 6, the girls know how to play volleyball. They know how to do something. That's going to be saber. Saben. And lastly, she knows a famous man. Okay, so this is a person, plus there's a personal a, we have to use conocer. Ella conoce. Okay, if you have any questions, please take a second, write down your question or comment, and then we will talk about it more in class. Okay, muchas gracias. Adiós.